The house looked like a miracle. A two-story Victorian on a quiet street just outside of town, with a porch swing that squeaked in the wind, and ivy crawling up the wooden pillars like nature was giving it a hug. Julia stood in the driveway, clutching the keys, barely believing it was hers. After everything she'd been through, the divorce, the sleepless nights on her sister's couch, the credit card debt, this felt like a second chance. It was too cheap. Even her realtor looked confused when she printed the listing, double-checking if the price was a typo. But the paperwork was clean, the property taxes were up to date, and the previous owner had already moved out. Julia didn't ask too many questions. She was tired, broke, and desperate to stop feeling like a guest in someone else's life. She moved in with nothing but 4 boxes, a mattress, and her cat Max. On the first night, she fell asleep to the sound of rain tapping gently on the windows and Max purring beside her. It was the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months, but the peace didn't last. The next morning, she found the front door wide open. No signs of forced entry. No footprints on the wet floor. Max was staring at the doorway, tail stiff, ears pinned back like he was ready to attack or run. She laughed it off. Maybe she forgot to lock it. She had been tired. That evening, she set up her coffee maker in the kitchen. The cabinets were oddly deep and smelled faintly of mildew, but the countertops were beautiful, old marble streaked with gray. She made a mental note to clean the cabinets out later. At around 2 a.m., a soft thud woke her, then another. It wasn't loud, just strange. Not footsteps exactly, but something. She lay there, listening, heart pounding. Max jumped off the bed and vanished down the hallway. She stayed in bed until morning. By the third night, the noises had turned into whispers. Barely audible, like someone talking in the next room with the door almost closed. Julia pressed her ear against the wall, holding her breath. Nothing. But the second she stepped away, there it was again. Hushed voices, too low to make out words, but sharp enough to raise the hairs on her neck. She started leaving the TV on at night. 1 week in, she opened the cabinet under the sink to find it completely empty. That was odd, since she remembered stuffing a bag of sponges and cleaning sprays in there on move. In day, she blinked. Maybe she moved them somewhere else and forgot. She went upstairs. The sponges were lying neatly on her pillow. Julia stood frozen in the doorway, heart slamming against her ribs. Max hissed behind her. She grabbed the sponges and threw them in the trash, locking her bedroom door behind her. She told herself she was just tired, still adjusting. But deep down, something was starting to gnaw at her. A feeling she hadn't had since childhood, when she used to wake up in the middle of the night, convinced something was watching her from the dark corner of the room. Then she found the note. It was tucked behind a loose board in the hallway upstairs. The board popped out when Max pawed at it while chasing a moth. Julia was annoyed at first, then curious. She pulled the board free and found a folded piece of yellowed paper stuffed inside. In shaky handwriting, it said, "I hear them. They're in the walls. Please, whoever finds this, don't stay, don't listen to the voices, they lie." There was no name, no date, just that one message. Julia sat down on the hallway floor, legs trembling. She read it 3 times, heart thudding harder with each pass. Was it a joke, left behind by the previous owner, or was it a warning? Julia didn't sleep that night. She sat upright in bed, the note lying on her nightstand under her reading lamp, its crumpled edges looking more threatening than the words themselves. Max curled in her lap, unusually still, like even he sensed something was wrong. She kept thinking about that sentence. Don't listen to the voices. They lie. She hadn't told anyone about the strange things happening. Not her sister, not her coworkers, not even the real estate agent. She kept telling herself it was all just stress. Moving was overwhelming. Divorce was traumatic. But no amount of rational thinking could explain a cabinet rearranging itself, or whispers behind solid walls. The next morning, Julia marched downstairs with a kind of forced defiance. She was not going to let an old note and a few weird sounds push her out of her new home. She poured herself some coffee, pretending everything was fine. But the moment she opened the fridge, she dropped the cup. The milk carton was upside down on the shelf, its contents leaked out and pooled beneath the glass. A mess. Sure, but it was what was written on the door, in the fog of condensation, that made her legs weaken. WHYDU, Komihar. The letters were uneven, jagged, like someone had used a finger to trace them. She backed away, breath caught in her throat. There was no one else in the house. The windows were locked. She checked all of them twice the night before. She cleaned the fridge and tried to convince herself. Maybe she had written it and just forgotten. Maybe she was sleepwalking. That would be better than the alternative. She even Googled it, can stress cause hallucinations? The search results offered little comfort. Later that day, she drove to the hardware store and bought a carbon monoxide detector. Maybe there was a gas leak, she thought, something poisoning her mind. She installed it in every room. No alarm ever went off. That night, the whispering came back, louder. Still muffled, but insistent. It seemed to echo from within the walls, like a distant argument you can't quite follow. Julia pressed her ear to different parts of the house. The bathroom tiles, the closet wall, the hallway corners. And it was always the same. Voices just out of reach, whispering just below comprehension. Then came the laughter. It was low and raspy, like someone who hadn't laughed in years suddenly remembered how and didn't know when to stop. It drifted down the stairs at exactly 3:12 a.m., and Julia was too scared to move. Max arched his back and hissed at the bedroom door. The sound faded after a few minutes, like it was walking away. Sinking into the floor, she didn't sleep again. The next day, she called the real estate agent. "Did anything ever happen in this house?" she asked, trying to sound casual. There was a pause on the other end. "Not that I know of," the agent said. "It's been on and off the market for a while. No one ever really stayed long. You got a hell of a deal, though." "How many owners before me?" "Technically, 5 in the past 15 years. Julia swallowed. "Why'd they leave?" Another pause. "You know how it is. People move on. Divorce, job changes. One guy passed away, I think. But nothing tragic." The way she said it made Julia feel like she was leaving something out. That evening, Julia decided to go through the attic. She hadn't been up there yet. The door to the pull-down ladder groaned when she tugged the string. A musty smell hit her as she climbed up, flashlight in hand. Dust danced in the beam as she stepped onto the creaking floorboards. Old trunks, boxes, and yellowed newspapers filled the corners, and in the far back, under a plastic tarp, she found a rocking chair. The kind you'd see in an old nursery. It was moving, just slightly, back and forth, like someone had just gotten up from it seconds ago. Julia froze, every hair on her body standing upright. She stared, too afraid to blink. Then she heard it, a soft, childlike giggle coming from behind one of the boxes. She ran. She didn't speak a word about the attic. Not to the mailman. Not to the friendly neighbor across the street, who always waved when she took the trash out. She didn't want to hear anyone say she was imagining it. Because what she saw, the way that chair had moved, the sound of that child's giggle, it hadn't been her imagination. She knew it in her bones. But pretending was easier, safer, so she started pretending more, smiling when she poured her coffee, as if the milk hadn't spoiled again overnight. Laughing to herself when the lights flickered, saying, "Must be old wiring," even though the fuse box had just been replaced. She even bought fresh flowers for the living room, thinking maybe, just maybe, life would bloom if she forced it to. But the house had other ideas. 3 days after the attic, Julia started dreaming. Strange, cold dreams. Always the same hallway, hers, but longer, warped with too many doors. She would walk down it barefoot, the wood beneath her feet splintering, her breath visible in the air. Every door she passed whispered something. Sometimes it was her name. Other times, it was a voice crying for help. But the worst ones just laughed. She woke up from one of those dreams gasping, only to find her bedroom door open again. She knew she had locked it. She had started locking it every night. Max was gone too. She found him later hiding behind the washing machine, eyes wide, shivering. Something was getting stronger, more confident. She had to know what happened here. No more guessing. No more hoping it would just stop. She drove to the public library, her hands shaking slightly on the wheel. She asked the old lady at the front desk if there were any local history archives. Property records, newspaper clippings, anything. It took a few hours, but she found it. An article from 1994. Small, buried on page 6 of the local newspaper. Local family vanishes from inherited home. Police still searching for clues. The address matched. Her house. A man named Thomas Brigg had inherited the house from his aunt. Moved in with his wife and 6-year-old daughter. 2 months later, all three were gone. No signs of forced entry. No sign of a struggle. Dinner still on the table. A neighbor reported hearing weird noises. The night they vanished, nothing was ever found. Another article, from 2001, former psychiatric patient found dead in vacant house. Same house. A man who had once been institutionalized for hallucinations and violent behavior was found dead in the basement. No one knew how he got in. Autopsy listed cause of death as a heart attack. But the coroner noted he was found with a terrified expression and broken fingernails, as if he'd tried to claw through the walls. Julia's blood ran cold. There were more. A woman who rented the house in 2008 and left town after claiming she was being watched. A man in 2013 who vanished after a month. Police chalked it up to runaway behavior. But a neighbor mentioned lights turning on and off at all hours. Music playing late at night, even when the house was empty. Julia sat there staring at the printed pages, her fingers numb. She wasn't going crazy. She was next. Back at home, she stood in the hallway, staring up at the attic door. She didn't want to open it again. But something inside her, call it rage, or fear, or just plain desperation, told her the answers were up there. She needed to know why the house did what it did. Why it lured people in. Why it never let them leave whole. That night, she tied a bell to her bedroom door handle. A small one. One that would jingle if the door moved. She lay in bed with a flashlight, her heart racing, Max pressed against her side. At 2:47 a.m., the bell rang. Not a loud jingle. Just a delicate ting. Like someone nudging the door gently, teasing it open. Then the knob turned. Slowly. And through the silence, Julia heard it again. That giggle, faint, closer now. A child's voice, whispering right outside her door. "Mommy." She didn't scream. That surprised her most. The moment she heard that whisper. "Mommy." Her whole body froze, but her voice didn't come. Not even a gasp. Maybe it was because deep down, she knew it had been coming. That she'd been walking toward this moment, since the day she put the key in the front door. The doorknob turned again. Max hissed, his ears flattened tight. Julia grabbed the flashlight and flung the bedroom door open. No one was there. The hallway was empty, cold, silent. But the air had shifted. It felt heavy, like walking into a room right after someone had died. She stepped out, light trembling in her hand, sweeping the beam across the walls. Nothing. Then she noticed it. Handprints. Tiny, smeared handprints on the wall, just above the floorboards, as if a small child had been crawling, dragging fingers across the paint. They led toward the stairs. Julia didn't follow. Not yet. She shut the door and locked it again, pushing the dresser in front of it this time. She sat on the floor all night, flashlight pointed at the door, jumping at every creak of the old house settling. In the morning, she didn't eat. She didn't check her phone. She just sat there, shaking. Max curled in her lap like he was trying to protect her. By noon, the sun poured through the windows like it was mocking her. Bright, warm, normal. The house looked harmless again. The handprints were gone. But the fear wasn't. She needed help. Not a psychic, not a priest. Someone who actually knew this house. So she went door to door on her street, knocking, asking questions. Most people smiled politely and said they didn't know much. A few gave her that uncomfortable look. The one that says, "I know something, but I'm not getting involved." It wasn't until she reached the last house on the block, a small yellow cottage with chipped shutters, that someone finally spoke up. An old man opened the door, narrow-eyed and frowning. "You're the one who bought the Brigg house, aren't you?" Julia nodded, unsure what to say. He didn't invite her in, but he leaned on the doorway like he had a lot to unload. "I used to mow that lawn, back when the Brigg family lived there," he said. "Nice folks, too nice." He tried fixing it up, painting over the rot. Didn't matter. That place eats people. She felt a chill crawl up her arms. "You think it's haunted?" "No." He looked her dead in the eye. "I think it's alive." He told her what the papers didn't. About the rumors that no one printed. That long before the Brigg family moved in, the house had been part of something worse. A woman in the 1920s who ran an unofficial foster home in the house. No records, no inspections. Just lost kids no one came looking for. And most never left. People say she locked M in the attic when they cried. He muttered. Said the devil was in their lungs, and the dark would cure M. Few neighbors heard screaming. But by the time police came, she was gone. Vanished. The house just sat there after that. Waiting. Julia's mouth went dry. Waiting for what? He shook his head slowly. People. Souls. Doesn't matter who. That place just wants them inside. She went home without saying goodbye. Inside the house, everything felt still. Too still. She stood in the living room, the old floorboards creaking under her weight, and said out loud, "I know about the woman. I know what she did." The lights flickered. Then the old record player in the corner, one she had never touched, came to life. A lullaby began to play, soft, off-key, like a child humming through cracked lips. She stood frozen. Then, the voice came again, this time from the attic above. "Don't leave me, Mommy." She didn't bring the flashlight this time, or a phone, or even Max. She left everything behind and stood beneath the attic pull string, staring up at the cracked ceiling with her jaw clenched and her hands shaking. Whatever was up there, it had waited long enough. The record player downstairs kept spinning, repeating the lullaby like a warning, or maybe a dare. The old wooden melody drifted through the house as she pulled the string. The ladder dropped down with a groan. The last time she went up there, something giggled. This time, there was no sound at all, just that stillness, that heavy, choking stillness. Like the air itself had been holding its breath. She climbed, slowly. Each step groaned like it was going to snap under her. When her head broke through the attic opening, the darkness swallowed her. No light, no windows, just shadows piled on top of shadows. But she felt it, a presence, watching her. She crawled up the last step and stood. The rocking chair was there again, this time not moving. Behind it, the boxes, the tarp, the smell of something that had long since rotted. Then her foot bumped something. She looked down. A doll, old, porcelain, with one cracked eye and a stained blue dress. Its mouth was open in a frozen scream. She reached down slowly and picked it up. It was cold, too cold. As she turned the doll over in her hands, a soft voice came from the shadows behind the chair. She said she'd come back. Julia's breath caught. She lied. Then something moved. slowly crawling out from behind the chair on all fours, the shape of a child, or what was once a child. The thing's skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched too tightly over its small frame. Its eyes were black, endless, hollow. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke again. She said the dark would make me better. Julia backed up, heart pounding, until her back hit the attic wall. She couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe. The creature tilted its head like a curious dog. But it didn't. It hurts here. It placed a hand over its chest. Then the attic floor beneath it shifted, creaked, and a long, low groan rose from below, like something else was waking up. Something bigger. Julia's eyes darted to the floor. Beneath the grime, she saw faint scratches, claw marks, tiny handprints, circles drawn over and over again like someone trying to count the days. And names, etched into the wood in a child's messy handwriting: Tommy, Ellie, Sarah, dozens of names, faded, scratched over, forgotten. Julia looked back at the child. "Who are you?" The thing tilted its head again, eyes wide. "I don't remember." Suddenly, from the floor below, bang. Then another, and another, like something pounding from the basement. Something massive. The child creature didn't flinch. It only smiled. "She's coming." The attic went cold, the kind of cold that steals the air from your lungs and makes your bones ache. Then Julia heard footsteps on the stairs below. Heavy. Slow. Coming up, step by step, not childlike, not human, something else. The record player downstairs started skipping, repeating one line over and over. "Hush now, hush now, hush now." The attic trapdoor slammed shut behind her. And Julia knew she wasn't just in the house anymore. She was inside it. She didn't try to open the attic door. What was the point? It wasn't just shut, it was sealed. Like the house had decided she wasn't allowed to leave. Not yet. The air around her felt thicker with every breath, like the walls were closing in. The creature stood in the far corner, unmoving now, as though its purpose had been fulfilled. It just watched her, its black, unblinking eyes reflecting nothing. Below them, the pounding continued. The steps creaked, each thud growing louder, heavier. Then, silence. No more music. No more voices. Just silence. Then a whisper, not in her ear, but inside her head. "The house remembers." Julia stumbled back, hand flying to her mouth to stop the scream rising in her throat. Her legs buckled, and she slid to the floor, knees pressing against the cold wood. She closed her eyes and tried to think. Anything to fight the panic clawing at her throat. That's when she felt it, something crawling across the attic floor. Not physically, in her mind. Images, sudden violent flashes behind her eyelids. A woman, thin and wild-eyed, dragging a child by the wrist through a narrow hallway. This hallway. Screaming, slapping, the sound of a door slamming shut, a key turning, the child's fists pounding on the inside. A mother's voice shrieking, "The devil lives in you! I won't let him out!" The child crying, begging, until the voice stopped. Days passed. Then silence. Julia gasped and opened her eyes. The rocking chair was moving again, this time slowly, rhythmically. But there was no one in it. Except there was. The air shimmered, just faintly, and a figure began to form. First a blur, then a shadow. A woman. Mid-30s, pale dress stained with something dark. Her hair fell in clumps, greasy and matted to her face. And her eyes were black holes. Julia stared, heart hammering in her chest. The figure in the chair tilted its head at her and spoke, the voice like splintered glass scraping down her spine. "You remind me of her. My Sarah." She screamed too. The room groaned again. The creature in the corner backed away, crawling into the shadows. Julia could feel the fear radiating from it. And if it was afraid, then what the hell was she looking at? "Why are you still here?" Julia whispered, not sure why she even asked. Maybe because her brain needed a reason. Maybe because she couldn't believe she was going to die in a goddamn attic. The woman smiled. but there was no kindness in it, because I was never punished. Then the room changed. It didn't move, not physically, but suddenly it wasn't just an attic anymore. Julia could see other things now, flickering in and out. Bits of other times. A rusted crib. A child-sized straitjacket hanging on a hook. Blood. A dark stain spreading across the wood where the chair rocked. Memories. Left behind like fingerprints. Julia stood slowly, her back against the wall. You locked those kids up. You tortured them. The figure's smile twisted, eyes burning now with something hungry. They were sick. They were mine. And then, Julia felt it again, the presence beneath the house. The pounding started up from the basement. Not random anymore. Rhythmic, purposeful. Something was trying to come up. Not a ghost. Not a child. Something older. The woman in the chair looked down at the floorboards beneath her feet. Her voice a hiss. He's waking. Julia didn't wait this time. She bolted toward the attic door, grabbing the pull handle. Yanking with everything she had. It didn't budge. She slammed her shoulder into it, once, twice. Sirasik. It flung open, and she fell through, landing hard on the hallway floor below. The house roared, not with sound, but with feeling. Every light burst. Every door slammed open and shut. The temperature dropped like she'd been dunked in ice. And somewhere, from the depths of the basement, something howled. Max darted from the kitchen and leapt into her arms. She didn't think. She just ran. But when she reached the front door, it was gone. Not locked. Gone. In its place was only wallpaper, floral faded. As if there had never been a door there at all. The front door was gone. Julia stood frozen, her breath fogging in front of her, heart slamming against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Behind her, the house shifted. The floor groaned. The walls exhaled. And the lights that hadn't already shattered began to flicker, like candle flames caught in a dying breeze. Max whimpered in her arms, claws digging into her sweater, but she didn't move. Not yet. She stared at where the door had been, running her hand over the wallpaper. It was real, solid. No seams, no cracks, no hinges. Just gone. It wasn't a house anymore. It was a trap. And she had triggered something old. Something that had waited. Hidden beneath the attic's stories and ghost whispers and flickering lights. The house had used the others. Their fear, their screams, their silence, as fuel. But Julia had done what they didn't. She'd listened. She'd uncovered. And now it was awake. There was only one place left she hadn't gone. The basement. The door stood open at the end of the hall. The stairs falling into darkness that looked thicker than night. She didn't want to go down there. Every instinct in her body screamed not to, but something deeper pushed her forward. Not curiosity, not even courage. It was knowing. She descended slowly. Each step groaned under her feet. The wooden railing was damp. The walls lined with peeling wallpaper that gave way to exposed brick. When she reached the bottom, she stopped. The basement wasn't what she expected. No washer and dryer, no furnace. Just stone. Cold, damp stone floors, bare walls, and at the center, something that looked like a trapdoor. Iron, bolted shut. Covered in symbols scratched deep into the surface. Circles, crosses, runes she didn't understand but felt. It pulsed. Julia approached it, feeling the temperature drop with every step. Max growled now, a sound so deep and unnatural it startled even her. Then she heard the voice again. Not a whisper this time, not a giggle. A man's voice, deep, calm, hollow. Let me out. She froze. It hadn't come from behind her. It had come from beneath. The iron door vibrated beneath her feet. A low, steady thrum, like something massive breathing just inches below the surface. You found me. Julia didn't answer. Her throat had gone dry. The voice spoke again. This time more familiar. You don't have to be afraid. I can fix it. I can give you what you lost. And suddenly the air around her changed. The basement vanished. She stood in a sunlit kitchen now. Her old apartment. her ex-husband at the stove, smiling like he used to before everything went wrong. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It read, "Accepted loan approval, 30 Zors dod." Max was curled in his favorite blanket, purring. Everything was perfect. Julia shook her head. It wasn't real. She turned, and behind her, the basement door stood wide open again, iron trapdoor waiting at the bottom. The illusion cracked, the sunlight faded, and the voice turned cruel. "You could have had peace, but you chose pain." The trapdoor burst open with a thunderous clang, and something began to rise. Not fast, not violent, just rising. A shape, tall, wrapped in shadows that twisted unnaturally, eyes like dying stars. No face, just pressure, just presence. Julia backed away slowly. "What are you?" she whispered. The thing stopped, then answered. "The one she fed us to." And in that instant, Julia understood. The woman in the rocking chair. The one from the 1920s. She hadn't been the root. She had been the servant. The house wasn't haunted by her. She had built it for this. A place to trap souls. To feed something beneath the floor. Something older than the house. Older than the land. Something hungry. Julia ran. Back up the stairs, past the whispering walls. Past the broken record player that had started spinning again. Backwards now, the lullaby reversed and howling. She reached the attic ladder, pulled it down, and climbed like her life depended on it. Because it did. The child thing was gone, so was the chair. Only the doll remained, and beneath it, something new. A small notebook. With names, dates, sketches, and one message scribbled again and again across the final pages. "If you want to survive, burn it." The attic was breathing, not in the way a house settles or groans. This was deeper, rhythmic. Like the walls themselves had lungs. Like the house had finally revealed its true self. Not wood and nails, but bone and blood and a hungry, ancient thing squirming just beneath the surface. Julia stared down at the notebook, her hands trembling. The words echoed in her skull. "If you want to survive, burn it." She looked around, the old boards. The moth-eaten insulation, the centuries of dried wood. The house was a tinderbox. A coffin built of kindling. And suddenly she wasn't afraid anymore. She was done. She ripped pages from the notebook, balled them up, and shoved them into the crevices of the attic floor. She found old drapes, splinters, dried rope, anything that would burn. She moved like she was in a trance, but her thoughts were razor sharp. This thing had taken enough. Too many lives, too many minds. She wouldn't be next. She wouldn't be another whisper in the wall. Downstairs, the house fought back. The wallpaper peeled in long, hissing strips. Lights exploded in showers of sparks. The floor shook with every step of the thing rising from the basement. Julia could hear its voice now, not in her ears, but in her chest. "You're mine, like the rest." "No," she whispered. "I'm not." She struck the first match. The tip flared to life, orange, angry, beautiful. She dropped it. The fire caught fast, furious. It danced across the attic like it had been waiting years to be born. Smoke curled up and around her, thick and choking, but she didn't stop. She climbed down the ladder, flames licking at her heels. The thing was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Or maybe it was the stairs. It had no shape anymore, just darkness, hunger, the promise of being swallowed. "You can't leave," it whispered, filling every wall, every beam, every nail. "I'm not asking," Julia said, and hurled the flaming curtain she had ripped from the attic window onto the floorboards below. The fire surged, the house screamed, not creaked, not cracked, screamed, walls blistered, ceiling sagged, glass shattered, and above it all, the thing, whatever ancient evil the house had fed for a century, howled with fury as the fire chewed through its home. Julia ran. Through the thick smoke, through the heat, through the collapsing hallway where faces once whispered from the walls. Now they only shrieked. She reached the spot where the front door had once been, still sealed. But the fire worked faster than the house could shift. The wallpaper blackened, peeled, then, crack, the wood split. A beam above her snapped, crashing down behind her in a storm of sparks. She threw herself at the wall, and this time, it gave. She fell through, onto grass. Cold, wet, real grass. The world exploded behind her. The house burned like it had waited years for this moment. Like every tortured soul, every cry in the walls, every shadow, was being released in one last roar of fury and freedom. The roof collapsed inward. The fire turned white hot. And then, finally, silence. Smoke coiled into the air like a dying breath. The neighbors would come. The fire trucks, the questions. But none of that mattered. Julia sat in the grass, Max trembling in her lap, and stared at the smoldering wreck. She was shaking. She was alive. And whatever had lived in that house was gone. Not defeated, not destroyed, but banished, for now, because as the ashes cooled, and dawn crept across the sky, a small wind kicked up and scattered something through the air. A charred piece of paper. It fluttered to the ground beside her, still readable despite the flames. The house remembers.